And good morning. This is Monty once again from DPL Surveillance Equipment. I'm doing my morning chores, wiping down my car, as you might guess. And this is a form of therapy, I think I mentioned before, actually. When I'm doing my chores, when I'm wiping down my car, and I guess the end result is you get to have a car that looks like it's clean enough to eat off of or something, whatever. As a result of, wiping it down every morning and doing all these chores every morning just as a matter of habit. And while I'm doing these things, I'm always considering what's happening in the financial markets, what's happening, what's mentioned by Bloomberg financial news reporters, what's mentioned in the Wall Street Journal, et cetera, et cetera. These things help me make good decisions, I hope, for my business and personally as well. And there's a person by the name of Rupert Murdoch, for instance, very successful person, very successful company. He runs Fox News television empire. Fox News is huge. 20th Century Fox is what it's better known as. Anyway, major media empire. And Rupert Murdoch has been known to be very, very intelligent. His decisions allow him to put together an empire that rivals pretty much any major media empire, including Time Warner, including whatever, ABC, CBS, Viacom, anything else that you've ever seen. He's pretty much at the top of the heap. Anyway, one thing that he attributes his success to is staying informed and staying abreast of what's happening in the local economy, international economy, business and finance particularly. And he lays out in the morning, for instance, 2, 3, 4 newspapers, magazines, or whatever, and he tries to stay on top of everything that's going on in an attempt to be able to make good decisions. So I suggest you guys do the same. If you can't read or devour that much information, do what you can. But just realize when you have good information in front of you, you get a chance to make good decisions. And sometimes you can't get all your information from one source, so you cross-reference, cross-check, and compare and get viewpoints from different sources. Then that way you can make better decisions because you don't have to just solely rely on one source. You're getting information from various sources. And anyway, that's one tidbit of information I want to pass along to you. And the concern today is for the common worker, the person who's working 9 to 5. We call them cannon fodder. When you have wars and such, certain people are going to be taking the bullets on the front line. They're going to be doing the heavy lifting. They're typically viewed as the rank and file workers. You guys are the ones that make America actually work because you do the work. Productivity levels are extremely high levels, for instance, in the United States, and it's because people are working like crazy in order to make a living because they're afraid of being laid off or replaced by artificial intelligence and such, robots or whatever. So I'm going to get to the reason why I'm bringing that up shortly. But before we do, because there's a methodology to the madness in terms of the various disparate things that I'm talking about. I'm going to try to put it all together. If no one interrupts me this morning, I turned the ringer off so they don't interrupt me. So hopefully we won't have an issue with that. But see, you may ask, also, who am I? I'm owner of DPO Surveillance Equipment. My name is Monty Henry. I run a full service, me and my wife Carolyn, we run a full service surveillance and security equipment company. We have lifetime guarantees and warranties on all the products. We have 24/7, 365 tech sales and customer support. the largest inventory of items, and not only can you buy, but you can rent as well. We have a significantly large and growing video library, demonstration video library, where we demonstrate the products, how they work, what they look like, what they do, whatever. And you can see hundreds of videos on the products. And while you're there, look in the articles directory, read the articles about not only surveillance, not only counter surveillance, but anti-terrorism products and technologies and terrorist-related articles, etc. Citizen surveillance is a big topic a lot of people are looking at now. Also, we talk about some things that are not related to the business, not related to the products. We talk about cybersecurity is a big thing we talk about in the articles and the videos and the podcasts and the blogs. We talk about health and fitness even. We want you to be healthy. We want you to be fit. I've made a lot of videos of myself working out in the gym just to inspire those who are trying to stay in shape. So as we become wealthy and prosperous, we want to be able to live and enjoy it. You know, that makes sense to me. Hopefully it will make sense to you. And then also, cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general is a big topic, a big deal nowadays. We want everybody to have financial sovereignty. That means control over your money. That means not having to worry about the banks, Citibank and Wells Fargo and HSBC and HSBC and all of these banks. We don't need to have them tell us what we can spend, when we can spend it, and what time of night or day. No weekends, no after 5, or no amounts over this amount. No monies can be sent to this country or that country. With Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, there is no person to tell you what to do with your money. If you earn that money, you work shitloads of hours, and a lot of you know that you indeed work shitloads of hours, tons of overtime. The last thing you need is someone telling you what you can do, how much you can spend, where you can spend it, who you can spend it with, and who's going to get the money, who can't get the money, all that shit. So anyway, we just want to make you guys aware of the fact that since Satoshi Nakamoto released Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies on us, now we have a choice. Don't just depend upon the dollar. Don't just depend upon the yuan. Don't just depend upon the lira, whatever currency that you normally use. That's not your only choice nowadays. You have other choices. And we'll get into why that's important as well. But anyway, lots of topics, lots of videos, lots of blogs, lots of articles. The website is completely redesigned and revamped so that you can navigate it easily on your cell phone, smartphone, laptop, iPad, iPod, whatever. Not iPod, but I guess iPod. If you want to listen to the podcast, you probably can use that probably. People would like to listen only when they're doing certain things like traveling on the subway, train, or bus. Maybe you just want to listen to information. So we have that as well. What else we want to cover? We don't want to feed the MasterCards and the Visas and the different institutions that are trying to financially oppress us. So we're going to be offering Bitcoin and Litecoin and Ethereum initially, and you'll have the choice of placing your order and paying using those alternative payment methods. That's being integrated into our shopping cart right now. We'll be one of the few surveillance and security equipment companies, one of the few companies overall that are going to exclusively forbid transactions taking place in the types of payments where everyone is being enslaved and controlled. In other words, the fiat system is, we're going to put less emphasis on fiat-based transactions or anything tied to this fiat-based system, and more emphasis put on cryptocurrencies and the cryptos that are obviously going to promote financial sovereignty. Okay? Where you control your money, you control your private keys, use your ledger, nano, use your treasure wallet, and you keep your money in your possession. No one can take it away from you. Okay? So I think we covered. Oh yeah, the website has been completely optimized for mobile. I think I mentioned that. I can't remember, but anyway, it's completely optimized for mobile. Comes up very quickly and easily in the search engines. I think it's viewable very nicely on those smart portable devices as well. Let's get right into the article and see, now that we've covered the preliminaries. Now, let's see. The reason why I was talking about the workers and them being fodder for the cannons of the financial institutions and the governments all over the world is because, well, let me just state the title. The title is The Weaponization of Global Finance. Again, the weaponization of global finance. Now, the reason why I like this title is because the way the dollar is used, the way the yuan is used, the way certain countries are using their currencies, it's almost as if these were the new guns, these were the new missiles, these were the new bombs. In other words, if you want to do financial devastation to some country that didn't want to do your bidding, let's just pick the United States, okay? Heaven forbid the United States should fit this description or whatever, but let's just say it's the United States. If the United States wants another country to do its bidding, whether it's North Korea, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Turkey, heaven forbid, whether it's Canada, or any country in the European continent for that matter, what the United States typically likes to do, it likes to use its financial might by way of its currency. In other words, if most U.S. banks and most banks around the planet are accepting dollars, and the entire banking system of the planet is basically based upon transacting in dollars, they could cut you off as a country to this network of banks and infrastructure for finance. So when it comes to you paying your bills and getting things done in the financial markets, for instance, if you're cut off from the financial system and it's all denominated in dollars pretty much, then you could have a problem. Sanctions are very real. Sanctions are a way of saying that you will not get access to capital and goods and services unless you do what we tell you to do. So this is what we mean by weaponization. You are punished. You are penalized if you don't do what we want you to do as a superpower. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that is very harmful to a lot of people who don't have a whole lot to do with what the government officials are trying to do in Washington or in Canada or in Mexico or North Korea, South Korea. We don't care. If you are just a citizen trying to feed your family and Donald Trump, for instance, decides, okay, you're a Turkish president and your name is Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and he wants to punish you because there's a minister or something in your country and you want that person released immediately, what could happen is you could find your entire country's economy could be devastated, right? So, unfortunately, that's a practical example of weaponization and finances, okay? And believe it or not, this is actually happening. The president of Turkey, who is supposedly an autocratic person, type of governor or type of president, his name is Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and there is a pastor, Andrew Brunson, who's being detained in Turkey, and the entire country is being penalized. All of the citizens are being penalized because of what's going on with Donald Trump and Mr. Erdogan. Now, unfortunately, we don't think that's right. We think if you're just a working person with a family of who knows how many people, 2, 3, 5, or whatever, and you're just trying to make ends meet, we don't need to punish you specifically. If we need to target or send a message to the president, don't punish the people who don't make decisions, have very little to do with whether or not a pastor is released or not. I think that's between the president of the United States and the president of Turkey, right? But again, when you have a country that uses its currency as a weapon to bully around other countries, this is what you get. And the reason why I keep throwing Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in there is because more and more countries are starting to get bullied around and cut off from the U.S. financial banking system, which is huge and massive because it's supported by people with guns and cannons and, and not so much cannons anymore, but missiles and bombers and aircraft carriers. In other words, if you don't do what we want you to do, it's a good chance that someone would probably want to declare war or something eventually, like what this idiot did or is talking about with Venezuela. Venezuela is sitting on huge oil reserves, and Trump is talking about if he doesn't get what he wants out of Venezuela, he has every right to move in there with the tanks and the missiles and the bombers and the aircraft carriers and everything else to make those people bow down and bend and be submissive to his desires and what he wants. And let me just throw this in there. The weaponization of fiat and the weaponization of finances is a problem. But with Bitcoin, if I'm a citizen of Turkey or North Korea or Venezuela or Cyprus or Greece or China, I don't have to worry so much about what the government officials are doing. I can send, if I'm the United States and I got a family suffering in Greece or Cyprus or Turkey or Mexico or Venezuela or somewhere, I can send them monies so that they don't have to suffer. You can't do that with fiat. That money will be stopped immediately as soon as the bank gets a hold of it, and you will be pressured to reveal everything that you're trying to do. But if you have Bitcoin or Litecoin and or Ethereum or something, you can send that money to those various countries, to the family members in those various countries, and they can have food. They can have the ability to go out and buy clothing, get fuel, or automobiles or something, all the things that they need to survive, because they're not the ones making the decisions again at the top. Okay? You guys don't have that type of power, so you don't really need to be punished, but you do have the power to step outside the system with Bitcoin, for instance, and not worry so much about being impacted or have your family impacted by the weaponization of finance. That's what I mean specifically. So just realize that sanctions are a very useful tool for governments like the United States, but they're becoming less and less relevant because, again, if Venezuela creates their own cryptocurrency like they're doing right now with the petrol, they can get funding, they can get monies into that country from other countries, bypassing the banking system completely. So a lot of this is moot anyway if people would wake up and understand the power of cryptocurrencies. Now, Venezuela just happens to be taking the wrong approach in terms of creating a worthless petrodollar, a crypto dollar, for instance, whatever they call it. I can't remember the specific name of it, but it's a crypto based upon the petro. But it's designed wrong. It's designed to be like Bitcoin or something, but it's actually designed wrong. They got the right idea, but they just designed it wrong because there is no direct correlation with the amount of oil backing the cryptos that they're forcing the people to take. So, right idea, wrong implementation. Eventually what's going to happen, you guys, is these countries are going to use Bitcoin specifically, and they'll, when there's sanctions, when there's tariffs, when there's capital controls, like what happened in China, when there's high inflation, like in, what was it, Argentina, Zimbabwe, Greece, you'll be able to use your Bitcoin and you'll be able to bypass the system completely. So this is what we're trying to emphasize. Going forward, you're going to see countries, even Saudi Arabia, is chastising Canada for speaking out on human rights. I think it was in Canada, in Saudi Arabia. So now a lot of trade is being affected by Saudi Arabia punishing Canada. And that's a financial tool, again. That's weaponization of finances. These Canadian citizens don't need to be fodder for this war between the people who run Saudi Arabia, this monarchy, and the people who run Canada, the Prime Minister. So all the citizens are being drugged into this and being impacted, but again, they don't have any say-so over the matter. And if they had Bitcoin, if they had some Litecoin, if they had some Ethereum, I could send my family members in Canada monies. They can send me their money to get out of the country if they wanted to. But not with the fiat, not with the Canadian dollars, not with the traditional fiat-backed currencies that we've been using and forced to use by people with with tanks and guns and ammunition and, again, aircraft carriers and missiles. That's not the ideal situation to be in, to be forced to comply as compared to having a choice. So that's where we're going with this. That's what we mean by weaponization of finance. And this thing is being used more and more, and what Trump is doing with Erdogan and Turkey is just the tip of the iceberg. You're going to see this more and more because the United States is losing its power, losing its influence, losing its control, and it needs to resort to something to keep people in check. But because the world is changing, particularly with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, it's going to be impossible to force everyone to bend and comply and bow down to the authoritarians in Washington. So just remember, going forward, we're going to stress that you guys step out of this war and stop being cannon fodder and stop being pawns in the weaponization of the country's finances, different countries' finances. And again, if you need to save your family and give them some financial resources, you probably want to look at Bitcoin. You probably want to look at Litecoin. You probably want to look at Ethereum and some of these guys to make sure that your transactions can actually go through to the people, directly to the people, bypassing the banking and financial institutions. So that's going to be important going forward. Let me see if there's anything else in this article that I want to cover that I haven't mentioned already. I'm going to include the article, by the way, like I always do, so you can read it yourself. And by the way, history has already shown that, you typically start off with countries bullying each other around with sanctions and tariffs and all these things, and eventually they have, short-term results, but long-term, they typically lead to crises. In other words, if you want to devastate some country's currency, there's no better way to do it than to attack it And then what happens is the investment capital flows in or out of those countries, and that creates a very devastating problem. I think George Soros taught us a long time ago when he made some bets on a weak currency, some European country. He bet against it, and that currency was weak. And when they bet on that weak currency and it went down, it dropped, which is what George Soros wanted because they were shorting it. They were able to not only push it even further, but they took advantage of the weakness and made billions and billions of dollars, if not tens of billions of dollars. That's what really put George Soros on the map. And this is going to be what's going to be used in the future, going forward more and more often. Short sellers, hedge fund managers, and other traders will take advantage of what the governments are doing to weaken the country's finances and currencies, and then they'll short it even more. They'll drive it down even more. And it's just like a weak stock in the financial markets. If I know I can beat down Herbalife or beat down Tesla stock or something like that, then we'll be able to drive it down and pick up a lot of cheap shares and make a lot of money taking advantage of the weakness. So anyway, that's what happens when in the financial markets. People take advantage also. So anyway, yeah, I think that covers the gist of everything that we want to talk about. We're gonna conclude this session, and like we say at the conclusion of every session, be careful out there. Keep your eyes and ears open, and stay safe. Stay safe out there. Okay, you guys take care. Bye.